Yeah, I think it's interesting what you were saying earlier of like when you grow up in North America, let's say, like I'm from Canada, you're from the US, we have similar kind of bubbles of people that don't want to leave. Like you said, that's the hoorah, USA,
Yeah,
Canada, whatever. We have it figured out, everyone else doesn't.
exactly.
Um, and people do find themselves in those bubbles. And I think that from the North American perspective, it's a cultural bubble where we have, a bunch of modern conveniences and we're told that, this is the center of the universe and blah, blah, blah. Where in other countries, they also have bubbles, but they're more maybe economically motivated, where it's like, they would like to go to a different country, but they don't have the economic means to do so, right?
Correct.
Here, it's a choice. We say, well, we don't want to go. Why would I go to Colombia? I'm going to get kidnapped, right? I'm going to get killed. And there's always a lot of reasons to not want to get outside of that bubble, right? And I think that a lot of the media can reinforce that as well, right? Oh, don't go to Mexico. Cartel's going to kill you. Don't go to Colombia, right? The drug traffickers are going to get you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's easy just to say, no, I'll just stay home then, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to die.
Here's the thing about the news, and I worked in TV news for 10 years. It's just TV news thrives off of negative news because you got to think of TV news as like gossip. Because when it comes to gossip, it's the juiciest gossips are the ones that are the most negative. And when it comes to gossip, sometimes certain details can be exaggerated or things sound a lot worse than they actually are. Not to say that there's nothing negative that ever happens, but yeah, when you're just surround yourself by negative stuff, you're going to think that that's the reality of things. And it was just so easy to prey on Colombia and say, "Oh, look, a bomb blew up in some jungle area." But then when you read these newspapers, they would have the dateline set to Bogota. But if you read the article, you would read that, okay, it's not in Bogota, it's actually in an isolated area where violence is prevalent. But people will just read the Bogota part and they assume that Bogota, Colombia is just it's like a jungle village where things get you have like two people fighting each like the guerrilla on one side and the army on the other and they're shooting at each other and Pablo Escobar somehow is the president still. That's what people would ask me. Like before I went down to Colombia, people would ask me like, "Hey, is Pablo still president?" I'm like, "What? Wait, what? Where did you get that from?"
It's
It's
wrong on so many levels.
I know. Or they would say like, "Oh, did they have internet down in Colombia?"
Mm.
Like they have cars down in Colombia. It's like no, so I would just mess with their heads. It's like no, I actually there are no cars in Colombia. I actually go to work on taxi burro. And they'd be like, "Whoa, really?" I was like, it's like, oh my god, dude, you got to get
Yeah.
out of town.
And I think that people have a tendency to kind of turn countries into caricatures of what they think they are. And unfortunately, for some countries, those caricatures are negative. Like the same thing is true from the Canadian perspective, right? What does the world know about Canada? It's all moose and maple syrup and hockey, right? And so we're also reduced to a caricature, but that's not a negative one, right? And so it's different when the perception of your home country is bombs and drug trafficking and murders and Pablo Escobar and all that kind of stuff. That I can get tiring after a while. Like my girlfriend is from Colombia and we live here in Canada. And I know that weighs on her talking to people here and everyone is just like, oh, Colombia, cocaine, blah, 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 blah. They just have these things that they kind of spout off without even thinking about it. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, Colombia sure has its problems, right? People know that. But that isn't the full story of the country. It's so much more than that, right?
It's just that it was a dark period of its history, which was back in the 80s, which is going on 40 years ago now. So in the early 90s, but it's there has been so many things that have improved ever since then. And yeah, I mean, when I first went to Medellin back in 2007, I was quite possibly the only American. I did not see any other American when I was down there. Now today, if you go to Medellin, you see Americans in every single street corner. You just and if you go to El Poblado, they're full of them. Provenza, it's just pure gringos going out for the night. So I think definitely the Colombia has advanced a lot in terms of showing itself off as a desirable tourist destination. But there is still some work to do.
And how did you feel living there for 5 years? Do you feel like Colombia is a dangerous place to live?
When I lived in Bogota, the only yeah, Bogota had a problem at the time of getting there were street muggings that were quite prevalent. So, but you know the term of no dar papaya, I'm sure, which is the first rule of thumb that you learn in Colombia. So I couldn't really walk out on the street showing off my cell phone. If someone was calling me, I would have to like wait until I went inside somewhere. So that was really the biggest risk that I had when I was living down there. But that I think that's just concentrated into certain cities like Bogota and like Medellin. Like I was in Manizales at the end of last year where I was working on a project with the government of Caldas promoting tourism. And I was walking the streets of Manizales and I had my cell phone out and nothing ever happened to me. So if you go to the pueblos in Colombia, especially the touristic pueblos, it doesn't happen to you as well. And also I was in Cartagena where I was walking around with my professional camera equipment. And I didn't have a problem in Cartagena recording or anything like that. So it's kind of like isolated to certain cities.
And I think that probably is something that, a lot of Latin American countries share as well. It's not just a Colombia thing. There are certain areas that you just need to be more careful, right? Like the no dar papaya, basically like don't create an opportunity for yourself to be taken advantage of. Don't make yourself vulnerable where you don't need to.
Correct.
I think that being in Colombia, I was only there for 9 months over 2 different trips. So I did 4 months the first one and 5 months the second trip. You do kind of develop a bit of a sixth sense, I think, of like not wanting to take unnecessary risks when it comes to petty crime. Like you said, maybe don't have your iPhone 14 out on the street talking to people, or that you're gonna be inviting some problems that you don't want. I would also leave the house with like a limited amount of cash. Like I'll leave my wallet at home. Maybe I'll take like a credit card and like a little bit of cash to go to the store. But that isn't like that is different than fearing for your life.
Right.
I don't want to lose my wallet because then I got to go and pay to get my license reinstated. I don't want to do that, but it's not like I'm going to get kidnapped and, murdered or something like that. So it's a bit different, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely different. So as far as my fear of getting kidnapped by the guerrillas, that never happened. Fear of me getting blown up by a bomb, that never happened to me. So if anything, it's just petty crime, and these are things that can also happen in Europe as well, or any other place that you travel. So you just kind of get to know the area. And as you said too, like I would do the same exact practices. Like, okay, I got enough cash, so I'll just bring the cash that I need. I'll leave my debit card or credit card at home. I don't need to bring my passport. I'm just going to leave that in my hotel, and then I'm just going to bring what I need. So if something does happen, I'm not going to lose as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of learn to adapt to the environment that you're in, and especially if you're around local people. I mean, they'll tell you what you need to do anyway, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, my biggest recommendation if you're going to Colombia for the first time and you want to be extra safe, you just got to find a local who will guide you. They'll help you 1,000% to make sure that you have a safe trip. If you happen to walk into the area that they know is a little risky, they'll say, okay, maybe you should put your cell phone away right now because this area is known for blah, 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 blah. But in other spots, you'd be like, oh, yeah, you can take your cell phone out here. It's no problem. So Colombians can be like extremely helpful because the thing is, you have a lot of Colombians who want to show their country to be a desirable country to travel to. They're very proud of their country and they want foreigners to think positively of them.